Captain Winkapaw started the program in 1929 as just a little way to say thank you to the lighthouse keepers that dotted the area up around Penobscot Bay, and he realized that these people at that time had to stay at the lighthouses. They had no Christmas holidays. A lot of them led very lonely, isolated lives, but the lights had to be wicked and trimmed and lit at all times. So it was just a way of him saying, hey guys, I appreciate what you do, because many a night those lights guided me back home to a safe airport at Rockland.
Yes, yes. And then you started?
Well, I became involved in 1981. I was a volunteer at the Hull Life Saving Museum, which was just in its startup stages. And the museum at that time decided they wanted to do a little honorarium to Mr. Snow for all the years. He had done it for 44 years.
Yes, I know it did, yes.
And when they were putting together their program, it was discovered that Mr. Snow had suffered a stroke and was unable to continue on that year. So the museum director, Judy Van Ham at the time, approached Mrs. Snow and asked if they could assist in any way, and that possibly they could step in and do some of the flights that year so the tradition would continue. And Mrs. Snow was just thrilled with the idea, and in spite of all the tragic efforts that she was going through with Mr. Snow. And this happened in right around Thanksgiving time, and the museum did fly 3 weeks later to 6 or 7 lights in Massachusetts Bay. That I still don't know how they put that thing together so fast. It was all done by volunteers, including the helicopter, but they did maintain the tradition. And later on during the year, Mr. Snow passed away. So Mrs. Snow asked if the museum could keep the tradition going, and they were looking for somebody to head up the program. And I was just at a meeting, and nobody put their hand up, so I said, well, I'll try it. I really don't know a lot about it. And that's how we started, and here I am in 2003.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
We're still going along strong.
That's wonderful, yes.
Over the years, the museum could never fund the Flying Santa program. They just didn't have the funding to do it. So it became necessary for us to be a self-funded entity inside the museum. And I put together a group down there, and we were very creative how we would raise the funds to keep the program going. And we really didn't need a lot of money in those days. We could probably get by with about $1,500 to $2,000. And we did quilts, we did cookbooks, we begged. But by 1996, the museum was undergoing changes at the time, and they really were settling into a different direction. And it was decided at that time to form the Friends of Flying Santa Incorporated, which we are today, as a non-profit educational group. And we left the confines of the museum and set out on our own, and we have been going strong ever since.
That's wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Now this year we will be flying to 33 or 34 lighthouses and 3 U.S. Coast Guard stations from as far north as Jonesport, Maine.
Really?
Which is not too far from Canada.
Right.
All the way down to Northport, New York, to the Eaton's Neck Lighthouse, which is on the far western end of Long Island.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And it will take 3 separate flights.
I was going to ask you how
It'll
much.
take 3 separate flights.
Yeah.
The first one will be December 6th. We will be in Maine, and we will start, actually New Hampshire, Maine. We start at Portsmouth, at Newcastle, and work our way up during the day to Jonesport.
How many do you have doing it?
There are now 3 Flying Santas.
Okay.
There are 3. Myself, we have Chief Warrant Officer Davey Waldrop, who has been a great asset to us over the years. His last job before this job was the officer in charge of the lighthouses in the Eastern Coast,
Oh, really?
or
Yeah.
District 1.
Sure.
Dave has been with the program off and on 6 or 7 years, depending where his duty station takes him, but he manages to get back to the area, and he does get the suit on and do a couple of legs. And this year, we're also welcoming back Chief Warrant Officer Tom Guthline, who's the commanding officer of the Newport Coast Guard Station, Newport, Rhode Island. Tom flew when Davey Waldrop had transferred to Alaska. He served up there for 3 years, and Tom filled in to do a couple of the, do some of the flights. So now we're all back in the same area, and each one of us are going to do a different flight this year.
This is the only area that you do it. You don't do it on the West Coast or anything like
No,
that. do you?
Mr. Snow years ago flew all up and down the East Coast, and then got on a commercial flight and went to California.
Really?
And flew up and down the California coast.
Really?
He was a great man. He was and he didn't have the organization in back of him that we have today. A lot of this money came right out of his own pocket.
Oh, I bet it did.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Over the years, the cost of the program has risen considerably. If we had to pay this year for the helicopters, which we usually leased, we have to lease them every year, we would be looking at probably about $15,000 just for the helicopters this
yeah,
year.
Yeah, right.
Fortunately, our new president, Brian Tagg, over the years has made strong connections with the New England Helicopter Council.
Oh, good.
And we are now in the position where our helicopter costs are 0.
Oh, how wonderful. Yes.
And that has taken a great deal of pressure off of us.
Of course, yeah.
We still have to fundraise because there are other program expenses, and we're in the process, it's a slow process, but we want to make sure we get it right, of setting up the Flying Santa scholarship funds
Oh, how
For-
nice. Yes.
deserving children, and I think we're going to earmark ourselves into the children of active Coast Guard members up here in the Northeast. They're still working on the particulars, and I haven't really had an opportunity to actually read it and go through it lately. But I think that will be up and running next year.
Oh, how nice. Yes.
But in order to achieve this, we still do fundraising. We do lighthouse cruises.
Oh, do you really? Oh, that's interesting.
We also do lighthouse motor coach lighthouse tours.
Oh,
We've done 3 tours this year. We went to our old standby, the Cape Cod tour, which always is well received. We did a tour to what was the second tour? We went to Cape Ann,
yes.
up to Cape Ann and down through Essex and down through Gloucester. And this year we attempted something new. We went to do the lighthouse tours of Vermont.
Oh, really? Oh, how nice.
And people
Yes.
forget that there are lighthouses
Yes,
up in the
that's
lakes.
right, that's right.
And
I remember.
it went very, very well. I mean, we had a few snafus, saying it was the first time we were up there, but we learned from it, and we will be heading up there again next year. And I do believe that we found a way to take the ferry over to New York and do a lighthouse in New York.
how nice,
Because the lake is only 12 miles wide up there.
Right, yeah. I remember because I came from Chatham, Cape Cod.
Mm-hmm.
Was born and brought up down there, so I remember that lighthouse very well.
Well, that's one of the lighthouses we
Yes.
visit.
Yeah.
And originally there was a package delivered to the lighthouse, used to be thrown out of a fixed-wing plane. They'd fly around the lighthouse to get the lighthouse keeper's attention. When they came out and looked up, and they'd throw 1 or 2 packages out. Hopefully they hit the ground. Sometimes they went in the water. And in that package was just simple things. maybe coffee, tea, some chewing gum, some playing cards, or a cribbage board.
Now, were they all manned by just
At that
them, or
time,
did they have families too?
back then, it was the lighthouse keeper was part of the United States Lighthouse Service,
Oh, I see,
right?
okay.
And you took the job there, and your family came because they always had the keeper's quarters.
Okay,
And a lot of them were on islands, and some of them were on headlands, but you had to stay there every day of the year. And if you left, if you were fortunate enough to have an assistant keeper, it was a little bit easier. But if you didn't have an assistant keeper, then somebody had to take care of the
all
lights
time,
when
yes,
you
yes.
left.
Well, did the children go to school?
Depending on the locations. Sometimes they would stay, if they're on the island, sometimes the children would stay on shore and live with relatives to go to
Yes, I've heard of
school.
that, yeah.
I am sure there was an awful lot of self-schooling done
Yes,
at the areas. And but the lighthouse keepers, when this first happened, they were amazed that somebody recognized them for it,
yes,
and that it did bring them a little bit of extra
Yes.
Christmas cheer.
Yes.
And it caught on the first year, and by the second year, Mr. Winkapaw had, his list had grown.
yes, yes.
And Mr. Winkapaw's son was living in Winthrop at the time, and he went to the Winthrop High School, and one of his teachers was Edward Rose Snow. And Edward became very, very interested
Yes, yes,
in the whole program and the procedure. He was a teacher, but he was also starting to write books at the time. So the son introduced him to his dad, and the next thing you know, Ed was invited on one of the flights. And the following year he went on a flight, and the following year the route had grown so big that Edward was doing Massachusetts and the Winkapaws were doing
Oh, sure,
up
sure.
north. And then the Winkapaws got an opportunity to go to South America, to Bolivia, to fly gold out of the Andes Mountains.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was a 2 or 3 year job. But before they took the job, and before they went, they talked to Ed, and Ed took over the Flying Santa routes. And that continued until the Winkapaws came back in the 40s, the late 30s of the 40s. And again, they split the
Sure,
duties.
Sure,
And they did not fly in 1941. The government, because of the war, had
Oh, sure.
restricted them.
yeah,
The air. And in 1943, Mr. Winkapaw was flying, giving somebody a tour of the bay up around the Rockland area, and he suffered a heart attack and crashed into the bay. He died along with his passenger, which was very tragic. But from there on in, the Snows maintained this every single year. And when the first year we became involved, there also became a new regulation from the U.S. Coast Guard, which was now doing the lights. They had the responsibility for the lights, that a fixed-wing airplane could not fly lower than 500 feet over a lighthouse.
Oh, okay.
Well, that took care of throwing packages out the windows. Excuse me. So the only other thing we could do was switch to helicopters. And we've been doing it ever since. But when we switched to helicopters, it opened up a whole new window for us, because where they used to fly over a lighthouse, they maybe would be the keeper and some of their extended family there to witness it. But by the second or third year we were doing it, all of a sudden, at every lighthouse we came in, there was 25 or 30 kids.
yes, yes, yes.
So we had to take another look at the program, and we fine-tuned it pretty well today, that we know in advance at each light how many children are going to be there, their name and their age, and you have to know their genders today. So we made that boo-boo. And we had to stop at 10 years old. But upon landing, Santa will come out and he will pass to each child a small appropriate gift
Yeah.
wrapped with their name on it and the lighthouse they're at.
Yes.
And some of the kids are just amazed.
Oh, yes,
You know,
of course it is,
how does he
yes.
know I'm gonna, you know?
Right.
And then we have to do you have to do the build-in program for if it's happened to us a couple of times. All of a sudden, a family gets transferred into the area. Their name didn't get on the list in
yes.
time, and the kid could be standing there, and there was nothing worse to see a kid missing. I mean, tears come down.
Yeah, right.
So we cover ourselves in two ways. We always try and contact them just before we're coming to have them double check, because you can always slip another toy into the package.
Sure.
All right? Or we always have a few extras
yes.
now.
Yes.
And there'd be Brian, he'd be over there writing their name on it with a magic marker. But, you know,
That's all
we
right.
can pull it off. We
Sure.
know how to pull it off. And we still deliver the traditional lighthouse
That's really
gift
wonderful.
box.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So it's a labor of love.
Yeah. And it's important.
It is
It's
important,
very
and,
important,
and you
yes.
know, it's such it's an American New England tradition,
Yes.
and it should be maintained as
Yes.
long as it's possible.
Yes, oh,
And
absolutely.
we have the only way we pull it off is we have all volunteers.
That's wonderful.
We have no paid employees. Everybody that's involved is a volunteer. We do pay for the program expenses. I mean, if somebody's getting out-of-pocket expenses get too heavy, we will do some reimbursements.
Where do you do all this when you're getting ready to drop all the presents and stuff?
For years, we did it right out of my cellar.
Okay, all right.
This is probably going to be my last year
Oh,
of flying. I'm getting in my 70s now.
but this is good.
Need glasses, got new knees, losing my hearing. I am probably going to step back from the day-to-day operations and let these other people take it over. I'll remain as a consultant, and health willing,
Sure.
I will always be available
Yeah. But
for a flight.
There'll always be a Santa Claus.
Oh, yeah, there will be.
That's-
There is no shortages of Santa Clauses.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful, yeah.
I don't know how much time you have left, but I'd like to tell a quick little story about back in the early 80s when we were first involved in this. We didn't have the tools we had today, computers
Yes,
and
yes.
things like that. We worked off of a piece of paper.
Yeah,
And in my hometown of Hull, there was a hardware stores run by the Anastas brothers.
yes.
We were flying on a Friday, and we were going to do the Cape. And I had come home Thursday night. My wife Jean said to me, "Mr. Anastas from the hardware store called. They want you to call him back." So I called him back and got one of the brothers, Killy. And he says to me, "Could you please come down?" And he gave me this big package. And I says to him, "What is this?" He says, "It's an electric train set." He says, "It's old, but it runs. I had it up and running." He says, "And I want you to find a nice little 4 or 5-year-old boy," he says, "and pass that on to him." So I thanked him, and I brought it home, and I says, "What am I going to do with this?" Because there was a lot of logistics involved
Sure.
in getting this stuff ready. And back then, the toys used to be in the box.
Yeah.
So I went to the sheets where we were flying and looked at and I said, "Well, you know," I says, "there's at the Highland Light, there's a boy named Jeffrey. He's the only boy there out of 5 families. There were the 2 families living in the keeper's house, and at the time down there at the Light, they had looked like a big long ranch house, and there were 3 other Coast Guard families living in that, and all of these people were in the Coast Guard. They were using it for housing." So we got up the next morning and went to the airport down in Plymouth, and I met the pilot, Dale Hardy, and we were trying to pack everything into the helicopter, because we know the first stop had 5 families.
Yeah.
Okay? The second stop was going to be the Chatham Lighthouse,
Oh, yes.
and we had pre-shipped a lot of stuff there. We just had the one traditional box.
Sure.
The toys were already down there. Well, we get everything into the We get everything into the helicopter. I've got the pilot, Dale, I got myself. I've got a videographer with me from cable, and packages stuffed in the back seat, and there's not much room in the boot there.
Right, right.
And there's no room for the box.
Oh, dear.
Right? So I said to Dale, I says, give me the box. I hold it in my lap. And he says, you can't do that. And I know you can't do it. You're not supposed to. You're breaking regulations.
Right.
But I convinced him anyway. So we backed out of the airport. That's one nice thing about a helicopter. You can go backwards, too. So we backed out of the airport so the control tower couldn't see us and get Dale in trouble. And it was only a short flight from Plymouth to the Highland Light. And as we flew over the light, we could see a Coast Guardman come out with his son, it was Jeffrey. We could see another mother jumping into an old yellow Ford Falcon and beating it over the hill to the school, because it was a Friday, to get the rest of the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And we landed, and we shut the chopper down. We got all the packages out, and Jeffrey's standing there, very impatient with his father. So I walked over to him finally, and of course I knew his name. I said, well, Merry Christmas, Jeff. And you knows my name, you know. Well, we get into a little conversation, and I'm waiting for the mother to come back with the girls. So I says, Jeffrey, I says, what did you ask me to give? What did you want for Christmas again? He gives you that look. He says, you forgot already?
Oh, yes.
I said, no, I haven't. You wrote me a letter, and I'm fidgeting in my suit trying to
yeah.
find the letter, and of course I don't have anything with me in here. So I said, oh, Jeff, help out an old man. Now, I can't find that letter. What was it you wanted, you know? He said, don't you remember I wrote you and told you I wanted a sled? Oh, I says, that's right. He says, but then I wrote you the second letter when we came back home from Nana's down in Pennsylvania, and I told you, forget the sled, that I wanted an electric train.
Oh, yes. Very
Well, you
lucky,
almost
yeah.
full, you know, you.
Yes, of course.
Elf Dale,
Yeah.
he brings the package over and we give it to him. Well, the kid's looking at it, and at that time the girls showed up.
Yeah.
Well, they just took over.
Yeah.
The last thing I could see out of the corner of my eye was Jeff dragging this through the snow with his dad into the house.
Oh, how wonderful.
But when I got home that night,
I don't mean to interrupt, but we are getting
Okay.
close to the show,
All
but
right.
close to the end.
yeah.
But,
But the dad called me up. He says, I don't know how you did that. He says, but
Marvelous.
he says, I'm even rethinking my options on Santa Claus.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Do you want to give out your telephone number?
Yeah, if anybody would like to contact us, they can be reached at 781-925-0783. And if anybody feels in the Christmas spirit and would like to send us a donation that we would like to earmark for our scholarship fund, I would like them to send it to Mr. Brian Tagg at 82 Elm Street in Stoneham, Mass. at 02180, or possibly the best way to contact us is just to log on to our award-winning website at www.flyingsanta.org.
Oh, that's good. That's really great.
Yeah.
That'll be important. Yes, yeah. Oh my goodness, this has been, I don't know how fast this went, but we still have a few minutes left.
All right, and I'd like to take the opportunity we had a gentleman out on the coast last year write a children's book, The Flying Santa. It's a marvelous story. It relates to the Winkapaws and the
Okay.
Snows, and it's available. You have to go online actually to order it at, I believe it is www.callingcrane.com.
Oh,
Right.
it's a very good book. I was looking at it.
Yes, it's a marvelous book, beautifully illustrated.
Yes.
Beautifully illustrated. It was out last year. I know I personally sold probably over 100 copies.
Oh, good.
And once we started, we just couldn't get them in fast enough.
Yeah, right.
But if anybody would like to, relate the Flying Santa story to their grandchildren,
Oh, that's a nice
This
one.
is excellent.
Yes, that's very good. Yes, yeah. Well, I think we went through this. I'm not sure we're ready for a wrap or not, but this is wonderful.
well, I know a half hour goes so fast.
It does. You've
Yeah.
given wonderful stories, really.
I could sit and talk for hours. I talk till they throw me out.
Well, we have about 1 minute left, so I'm going to sort of thank you very much for coming in. This
Well,
has been
thank you very much for
interesting.
inviting us.
I've heard
This
so
is the way we get our message out.
Yes, yeah. Well, I've heard so much about the flying Santa Claus, but this is interesting because I never really knew some of the background of it. It's wonderful.
I just feel honored that I fell into the circumstances at the right time, and that it's the only reason you do it is it's so nice to make people happy at the
Yes,
holidays.
that's very important, yeah. Well, thank you again so much for being with us and doing this one. I'm so glad this is going to continue. You know, even when you retire,
Oh yeah,
we'll think of it anyway.
There's always room for Santa Claus. I think Santa's been around a little bit longer than the Flying Santa program.
Maybe, maybe. Right. As I say, thank you again. Thank
You're more
you.
than welcome.
Yeah, this has been very interesting, and maybe sometime again we'll have you again.
If I can fit it in.